I to understand you're still hanging around with Dr. Emmett Brown, McFly? Party slip for you, Miss Parker. And one for you, McFly. I believe that makes 4 in a row. Now, let me give you Nichols' worth of free advice, young man. This so-called Dr. Brown is dangerous. He's a real nutcase. You hang around with him, you're going to end up in big trouble.
Oh, yes, sir.
You've got a real attitude problem, McFly. You're a slacker. You remind me of your father when he went here. He was a slacker, too.
Can I go now, Mr. Strickland?
I notice your band is on the roster for the dance auditions after school today. Why even bother, McFly? You don't have a chance. You're too much like your old man. No McFly ever amounted to anything in the history of Hill Valley.
Yeah, well, history is gonna change.
A long, long time ago. Actually, it was only 4 years ago. That year, 2021. I thought of a podcast idea. It was so much fun that first year that I figured I would do it again. The next 2 years I did the sequels. Compared to the first, there are no equals. The 4th year, as you all know, was that silly cartoon show. And when March 31st arrived, I wouldn't say I almost cried, but I thought it best to decide to say my last goodbye. But I lied about Marchy McFly, said that last year was the last year and that the show had died. But I found a way to keep the podcast alive, and I'm gonna call it Marchy McFive. I'm gonna call it Marchy McFive. Yeah, I lied about Marchy McFly, said that last year was the last year and that the show had died. But I found a way to keep that podcast alive, and I welcome you to Marchy McFive.
And a 1, and a 2, and a 1, 2, 3. Beep boo boo, beep beep boo beep boo, beep beep boo boo beep boo ba boo boo. Happy Monday, everybody! Happy March 3rd, 2025. Happy day 3 of Marchy McFive, year 5 of Marchy McFly. Yes, I'm back for the 3rd day in a row. Now, I have to be honest with you. This isn't the type of marathon project that the first 3 Marchy McFlys were, where I had to watch the movie 31 days in a row, and I had to podcast about it 31 days in a row. I am podcasting 31 days in a row, but much like last year, there's a chance that I could do a couple podcasts in one day. So even though it is March 3rd where this podcast goes up, it's not necessarily March 3rd when I'm recording it. Now, that being said, it's March 3rd. It's 8:30 p.m. at night on March 3rd, and I am recording and putting out this show on the same day. The only day that I definitely didn't do that on was March 1st. I recorded it a little early because I was very, very busy on the 1st of March. And I thought, you know what? I'll get this one done early, and maybe I'll do one tomorrow, and I'll stay one day ahead of the game. And that didn't happen. And then I had today off. My work, we have this week, we have built-in vacation days for everyone on Monday and Friday. And I thought, oh, that's great. It's Monday. I will take the time and I will get some extra shows done. And that didn't happen. But I'm here now. I'm ready to talk Back to the Future from minutes 7:10 to 10 minutes and 45 seconds into this movie. Some real Easter eggs. No, I shouldn't say Easter eggs, but well, like seeds, we'll call them seeds, were planted early on where if you're a kid watching this movie, you might not realize what is being said. And then you'll go, oh, wow, that's referencing this and that's referencing that. But as, a grown mature adult male, I look at some of these now and I'm like, wow, they really are laying it on thick, letting you know things that are, could possibly happen or are going to happen. Not completely. There are some things that are said that are like, that we never find out if that happens, at least in the movies. But some things are like, whoa, they're really letting you know that this means that what you're going to find out something related to this. And I'm jumping ahead of things, but why don't we get right into it and let's not waste any more of your precious time. See what I did there? Time. So this 3 minutes and 35 second segment of the movie opens with Marty getting his fourth tardy slip. His fourth in a row, I should say. He probably has many more than four. But 4 in a row. Like that's to the point where you need to call the parents, not to, just let them know that their son's tardy, but actually check to like are the parents, like do a home visit. I don't know if they did that in the 80s in Hill Valley, but do a home visit because something's not right. If this child is still late for school 4 days in a row. And I feel like when we meet them later, they would be disappointed, but they wouldn't, the parents we know from the original 85 would not, I don't think they'd put enough effort in to discipline Marty because I feel like he is more of the alpha compared to either of them. But that's, we haven't got there yet. So I can't quite speak on that. I don't know if I'm breaking my own rules already, but Strickland's like, I mean to tell me you're still hanging around with this so-called Dr. Brown. He says the so-called Dr. Brown is dangerous. He mentions, you're hanging around with Dr. Emmett Brown. So that's the first time we saw Doc being mentioned. We saw the newspaper talking about the Brown Mansion, and now we hear his name, Dr. Emmett Brown. We don't have his middle initial yet, but this quote-unquote so-called Dr. Brown is dangerous, which tells me that he's well known, and not for good reasons. They probably think he burned his own house down, which I feel like some comic book touched upon that. And he's like the town, I don't want to say, town kook, He's not a noted kook. He's not a sitcom starring noted kook, but he is a town kook. And not like Steven Seagal. He was not a kook. He was just the cook in Under Siege. He's a kook now, but anyway, that has nothing to do with this or that. But this is the first time we hear Strickland use slacker. And I don't know if slacker was in the vernacular. I don't know if it was used a lot before this, but it really, to me, became associated with Back to the Future and, slacker. And Strickland actually, he's like, I hear your band's trying out for the Battle of the Bands. Why even bother? You don't have a chance. No McFly has ever amounted to anything in the history of Hill Valley. Okay, that's just mean, first of all. Like, if nowadays, if a teacher said that, you would be like, HR wants to talk to you, Strickland. You can't, look, even if you feel that way, you can't say that this McFly kid's a complete waste of space. You have to be encouraging for these kids. But even then, it's like, well, it's a little mean. But there's your first little Easter egg. There's, the no McFly ever amounted to anything in the history of the Hill Valley. And Marty looks at him and he goes, go F yourself. And then he punches him. No, he goes, history is going to change. I mean, that's not subtle at all. There's nothing, and that's not even meant to be subtle. Some of the things are subtle or attempt to be, or when you watch them over and over, you realize they're not. But history is going to change. I mean, come on. The movie's called Back to the Future. We know there's a time-traveling boy going back 30 years, which would be 1995. If I went back to 1995 right now, I'd be dating my wife. I would be, okay, let's say right now, March 3rd, 1995, I am a freshman in college. I probably 8:30 at night on a Monday, let's say. There is a solid chance that there's a 50-50 chance I'm in my room playing Nintendo Entertainment System, even though I had a perfectly good Sega Genesis at home. I'm doing homework, or more likely I am next door to frequent guest of the show and longtime friend Jay. We're playing, I feel like at this point we're playing Mortal Kombat 2. I mean, I'm just smashing buttons. I think every once in a while, Sub-Zero, I'd be like, yeah, come over here or whatever. I don't know. But it would take forever for me to beat him once, and it was joyous. I think I did beat him. I think I did. I could be wrong. It took forever. We'd be doing that, or we'd be playing NBA Jam. Those were, I feel like, were the big games. And I want to say we were listening to The Chronic. I believe that was the rapping. That's what the rappers were singing about. The Chronic, which I assume had something to do with back pain. So that's that. That would be what I was doing in 1995. My wife was not at the school yet, so yeah. I would be freshman year. This is the second semester, so I already have the beds bunked in the corner, which was a stupid idea. I liked it better when I had my own side, and I could just take your garbage and go, ha, throw it on this side. Get out of here with your stuff. It did make the room look bigger, but I wasn't, I was more of an acquaintance with my roommate. We didn't like hang out. We weren't like, unfriendly to each other. We just didn't hang out. So that's what I would be doing 30 years ago at this time. But Marty, he goes back 30 years. You realize history is going to change. Look at that. That's what we call a tangent, okay? This is what happens when you podcast alone. You just go on a tangent and you just figure out you got to find your way back. And I found my way back by just saying, oh, yeah, Marty McFly is also going back 30 years. But he's not going to see himself. He's too young to see himself. And Michael J. Fox is still too young to see himself, I think, at this point. But if I went back, yes, I would be seeing myself younger, no beard, more chins. I would just, that's freshman year. Everyone puts on the freshman 70, right? So one thing I noticed, and that's probably watching this in HD, and maybe I didn't notice this, early on, or maybe I just wasn't looking for it, is you do see they do age Mr. Strickland up a little bit. I mean, they completely shave his head. That's first of all. But you can see they, like, on the close-up when he goes, history is going to change, and you can get really close to him. You see these wrinkles around his neck. And to me, that looks like old age makeup. It looks like something that's not quite realistic. And then I'm seeing it also around his eyes and maybe some liver spots. That could just be him, and I apologize. But I think there's some makeup around his eyes also just to make him look old. And it's subtle. When you realize that we have to go back 30 years, but it works. And so after Marty tells Strickland history is going to change and really pretty much almost gives him an Eskimo kiss, they rub noses, we get to the Battle of the Bands, the audition just to get into the Battle of the Bands. And apparently it is a very important, or it's a very tough thing to get into because they have these really stuffy judges, one of which is Huey Lewis himself. In fact, that's the fun Easter egg of this whole thing, is that the judge who tells Marty and Marty's band that he's just too darn loud is actually the musician with whom the song they're playing like a rock version of it. It's like a little harder rock version. So Huey's probably like, what is this? I like this song, but I don't like this rock version. It's just, everyone say it with me, too darn loud. And the crowd goes wild. So we see Marty say, we're the Pinheads. Now, who the hell are the Pinheads? I looked it up, and there are 3 members of the Pinheads other than Marty McFly. There are Lee, Paul, and Bobby. Now, those are the names given to the characters in one of these comic books. They were never named in the movie, but the reason I figure the name makes sense is because That's their real first names of the real people. So never mind, quote unquote, what the characters' names are, is based on the comic. The actual Pinheads are Paul Hansen, Lee Brownfield, and Robert DeLapp. Now, Robert DeLapp is the keyboardist. I couldn't find anything on him except that he played the keyboardist in Back to the Future. Paul Hansen is a working musician. It looks like he did. He toured with, what was the band that he toured with? The Vanilla Fudge. He worked as the actual guitar tutor for Michael J. Fox in the movie. And I feel like the Back to the Future Wikipedia says he plays guitar. That's sort of, he's the bassist for the band. But then I looked up Lee Brownfield on the drums. Now, I literally found this on a Back to the Future Reddit page. It says an interesting meeting with the Pinheads drummer. I have not read the rest of this yet. So come along with me as I read this for the first time live to you while I'm recording this. I have no idea if this is any good, but it says it's an interesting meet. Let's see how interesting it really is, by Gerard Balzer. When my first wife and I divorced amiably. Isn't it amicably? Okay. When my first wife and I divorced amiably about 5 years ago, she moved to a town south of me. This may sound strange, but when she eventually started seeing someone else and she told me about him, I got really excited and wanted to meet him. See, he was the drummer in Marty's band, the Pinheads, from Back to the Future. I only met Lee Brownfield briefly. He was still playing drums with local friends. He said Michael J. Fox was awesome, and he had fond memories of playing basketball with him during breaks. His relationship with my ex faded after about a year, and that was that. But I thought I'd share. You had an interesting meeting with your ex-wife's boyfriend because he was the Pinheads drummer. You did not have an interesting meeting with the Pinheads drummer because you just met this guy. There's nothing interesting about the meeting. The person you met is what's interesting. Am I too much into semantics? But am I right here? His meeting wasn't interesting. Who he met was interesting. And really, was it even that? It's kind of interesting. It's interesting to me. But the fact that he knew who he was, he's like, Lee Brownfield? You mean from the Pinheads? If I said, this is Lee Brownfield, I'd be like, oh, hi, nice to meet you. And he was like, yes, I'm a drummer. Oh, that's very nice. Nice to meet you. I was in a movie called Back to the Future. Then I would, poop my pantaloons. But before that, I'd be like, oh, hello, sir. I don't know why I'm having a chance meeting with my ex-wife's boyfriend, but it is very nice to see you. Listen, honey, I left a couple of tank tops in the old apartment. Can I go upstairs and get them? Like, he's just making excuses to go over. Is Lee there? He brings his Back to the Future VHS. Can you sign this, Lee? Can you sign? And he's like, can you sign my breast? And he gets it tattooed. Look, I don't know what I'm doing here. I just wanted to mention the three people who play in the Pinheads. So, of course, it's too darn loud, as we said, and it cuts off to Marty and Jennifer walking through a parking lot, leaving school, and Marty's just discouraged. He's like, maybe he's not cut out for music, and Jennifer's like, no, you're really good. Remember what the dog says? He's like, yeah, I know. If you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything. And Jennifer really wants him to send in his tape to the record company, and he's like, and I'm thinking to myself, is that how it's done? Like, is it? You send in a tape. To me, I always thought it's like you have a band, you play live, and then someone comes and sees you live. That's at least my way my assumption works. But I guess you would send in demos. And apparently Marty has studio time with the Pinheads. I hope they didn't just hit record in a garage. But he's like, you know what? I don't know. What if he's no good? First of all, he's no good. What about the Pinheads? It seems like he would leave the Pinheads like that. But anyway, he's like, what if I'm not good? What if he's, not good enough? I don't think I could take that type of rejection. And he's like, Jesus, I'm starting to sound like my old man. And you can just see he's discouraged. And there's the first thing. I'm starting to sound like my old man. Well, I don't think I could take that type of rejection. That's right on a little nail on the head. And then Jennifer's like, look, he's not that bad. At least he's letting you take out your car this weekend. And that's when Marty's like, check out that 4x4. And we see the black pickup truck, the famous black pickup truck that is only in the original Back to the future, because if you look in the future movie installments, the truck's a little different, but it's close enough that no one would notice unless they're looking for it or watching these movies so many times. It says another custom 4x4 for Statler Toyota. So Statler's making customs? That was interesting. I did notice that the gas at Texaco is $1.09 for regular unleaded. Today, I think I paid $3.11. And when you think about it, though, 40 years and gas went up from $1 to $3. It seems like it could be more, and I'm glad it's not. I mean, please, I want gas to go down. And I've actually done like $2.75. I guess that's a lot, but comparatively to other things, is it? I just don't know. I just don't know. But he's like, someday, wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great if you take that up to the lake, put a couple sleeping bags back there? And he's like, does your mom know? Because they're going to be going up to the lake. He's like, no, she'd freak out if she knew I was going up there with you. She never did stuff like that. I think she was born a nun. And Jennifer's like, she's just trying to keep you respectable. And he's like, she's not doing a very good idea. And then he goes in for a little nookie. And then all of a sudden,
Save the clock tower! Save the clock tower! Mayor Wilson is sponsoring an initiative to replace that clock. 30 years ago, lightning struck that clock tower, and the clock hasn't run since. We at the Hill Valley Preservation Society...
Oh, it gets cut off because that's the end of today's segment. But, I mean, right there, save the clock tower. 30 years ago, the clock was struck by lightning. It hasn't run since. That one isn't as on the nose because you don't know that they need a bolt of lightning to get the car to work. You don't know that the clock tower plays such a prominent part in the movie. So that one is just some good foreshadowing, and really it works out wonderful that this lady came up and, put a little kibosh on the nookie. I couldn't think of a better word. Because if Marty didn't take that piece of paper, he probably would have been either stuck in 1955 or he would have been like, wait a minute, a bolt of lightning. I remember. Oh, it's a clock tower. When was it? And you know what? He probably wouldn't have remembered, but then the storm would come and like, it's happening tonight. So it wouldn't have been enough time, and it would have been planned out enough. And they would have had to try to get the car struck by lightning directly. And that would have been a little trickier, just driving around town, trying to get enough road to get up to 88 and hoping you get struck by lightning. Probably would have been good to go out by the Lion Estates where it's wide open and you can make a giant lightning rod and try to do something to stir it up. God knows that, lightning will strike out there. We do know that in the 50s. But to have it and know exactly when it will strike, I mean, you can't beat that. So it worked out. So that one wasn't really on the nose. But what was talking about, my mom would never do this stuff. She was a nun. She would never approve. She's not like that. She was never like that. Like, that's like right there. Like, well, you're going to get, a real serving of humble pie, or I guess horny mother pie. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. We don't know what happens next. We just know that this lady who I always thought kind of looked like she could be Catherine Hahn's mother comes up and asks to save the clock tower. And I think Marty gives a whole quarter. And it makes me wonder, what is a quarter in 1985 worth today? A quarter in 1985 would be approximately, what do you think? 64 cents in today's money, taking into account inflation. That's, at least according to the stupid AI on Google that gives you those results that aren't always right. So there's an inflation calculator on minneapolisfed.org, and I'm going to do 0.25 in 1985 is in 2024 73 cents. So again, that Google's wrong again, because according to this, in 2024 24, that's worth 73 cents. 2023, 71 cents. Oh, so it just, it goes up a little more every year. So it must be worth already even more right now, even though we're only a couple months into 2025. So I guess nowadays, if you gave $1, that would be, you think you give $1 to someone, that's nice. And that's more than the equivalent of Marty giving a quarter in. So let's see how much he would have given to give a quarter. If he gave 50 cents, that's too much. If he gave 40, how do you give 40 cents? I mean, really, I'm overthinking it now, but that's because, I only got 3.5 minutes to work with. So if he gave about 34 cents, that'd be 35 cents. That'd be the equivalent of giving $1 today, but he gave a quarter. Not too bad. She seemed pretty happy about it. I don't know if it worked. We don't know if it ever worked. And another thing where I talked about something that is set up, but never really answered is, Marty sending in a tape, Marty having an audition, Marty getting in with a record company. They didn't do anything like that when it came back. Like, Marty, your big concert's tonight. You think, my concert? Yes, with the Pinheads. And the Pinheads show up. Come on, Marty, we're playing Hill Valley Square Garden, or something like that. We're playing the Clocktower. Something along those lines was never addressed. This whole thing of Marty and his band. No, Marty afraid of rejection. And as far as we know, it never happens. Again, I'm going to break the rules and go to the future because, again, I make the rules. Who cares? We do find out that Marty hurt his hand in an accident, but then the accident never happened. So you have to wonder, does Marty go on to be a big musician? And it's never found out. Now, I think in last year, I did my Back to the Future 4, fan fiction idea. And I think it was he stayed in music, but he does like local recordings and he has a recording studio and he lets people, get studio time. So he owns a studio. I think that's what I went with as far as keeping him in the music world. But the Pinheads, as far as we know, never made it. And again, after setting up, your dad's not that bad. You sound like your dad with rejection and your mom's a nun. Those two things are paid off. The Pinhead, the music, really never is. I have to say, 3 days in, I'm kind of loving doing this and just trying to focus on these 3.5 minutes. It's hard because it always leads to things that we know about because we've been watching this movie for 40 years, things in sequels that I'm trying to kind of not bring into play, but I can't help it. I'm doing it. But I do love looking for little things in these 3.5 minutes and just kind of the conversation taking off from there, the dialogue, the monologue, whatever you want to call it, taking off from there. So right now, for me, it is 9 p.m. So it took me about a half an hour to do 20 something minutes worth of talking because I would pause it or I screwed up. I said, let's be honest with you. I'll give you a little behind the scenes. When I talked about Marty first saying he doesn't think he can take that type of rejection, I didn't say rejection. I said something that sounds like rejection, rhymes almost with rejection. Yeah, it rhymes with it. But I thought that would be, I didn't think that was a good idea. So I made the hard choice to cut that little blooper out. But it's 9 o'clock, so hopefully I'll get this show up for you fairly quickly because it doesn't take that long to get from turning it, I save it, I turn it into an MP3, then I send it off to the producers then send it off to the board listens to it. Once they approve, they send back edits, I do the edits, then I resubmit again, and then once the board approves, then I send it to the upload committee then puts it in the queue, they upload it to the system, and then we wait for people like you to listen to it. Or I hit save, I don't go back and edit because I've been editing as I go along, and I upload it, and hopefully it's 9:01 right now. Hopefully I'll get this up before 9:10 p.m. That's the goal. So I'm going to get out of here right now. You can follow me on social media everywhere at Geek Mentality except TikTok. That's Geek Mentality Mike. And I can show off if you go to Geek Mentality Mike, I'm going to do a quick video talking about today's episode being up there. And you can see my brand new Back to the Future hat. Yes, I bought a Back to the Future hat. And yes, I think it came in a men's small. I mean, it is one of these snapbacks that I have all the way to the last snap, and it's still squeezing my brain. But it says Back to the Future. It's like an orange trucker hat, and I kind of love it. Okay, so that's it. I'm done. 3 days down, 28 days to go. 20, 29, 30. Yes, 28 days to go. So I am really grateful for everyone who has been sticking with the show, finding the show. You know, Geek Mentality is a weird show because I do a lot of episodes, but I take long breaks. So there are like, you know, where someone does an episode, like a podcast will do an episode 2 a week, and you'll end up with 100 episodes. I will do, you know, 7 in a week, and then I'll take months and months off without you hearing from me at all. So, you know, in the long run, you get lots and lots to listen to. So if you're just, you know, starting the podcast now, you'll catch up with this episode in a couple of years. But for those of you who have been listening over the years, I thank you so much. I'll be back tomorrow. I hope you will too. But until then, thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. And here is my theme song.
This is my podcast, I made it. Geek Mentality's what I named it. And I think you should listen and subscribe. 'Cause I'm kinda funny and awesome. I think that I'm worth your time. And I'm kinda handsome. My mom says, please listen and please subscribe. At least listen to this episode.
Fans not experts.